Hi, good to see you. The neighbors were complaining about the noise in the apartment where a disabled man lived. But when the police arrived and opened the door, they discovered something surprising. David opened his eyes and immediately squinted around him. There was too much light, too white, too clean and unpleasant. A room of hospital that meant he was still alive. He inhaled deeply and tried to move his arms. They responded with hellish pain, but they still obeyed. While he looked at his fingers, David saw how they were swollen, but they moved, and that was comforting. But when he tried to move his legs, he couldn't do it. He tried again and again without success. He doesn't feel anything, neither hips nor knees nor fingers. David rolled his eyes, hoping that everything was just a dream, but he wasn't asleep. Everything around him was really. His legs were in casts and suspended in special structures. He didn't control them at all. Out of fear, his heart began to accelerate its rhythm. Something sharp. It beeped above his head, and a nurse entered the room immediately. "You woke up." Handsome man smiled at him. "Good morning. What's wrong with my legs?" David didn't feel like being nice. "First, let's look at your temperature and blood pressure," the nurse murmured, avoiding the question. "Tell me what's wrong with my legs. Why can't I feel it?" David shouted. The woman stood still and looked directly at the children. The boy's eyes, beautiful in a creamy white dress, seemed to be the personification of care, warmth, and professionalism. The nurse stared at David, and that look gave him comfort. The boy began to calm down and believed that he was in good hands. Dark blue eyes, almost blue, seemed like lakes of kindness and attention. They looked in such a way that they made you want to immerse yourself in them. From that look, the feeling arose that in this vast world, there is someone who understands you and is willing to. David really felt better and came back to ask the question, but without raising my voice. "Tell me, please, I will be able to walk yet. You are not ready for serious conversations," said the woman affectionately. She put her hand on his, and his soul responded with warmth. It seemed that the nurse had touched his heart, melting the ice of fear and incomprehension. "But I can tell you one thing with absolute certainty," he added seriously. "Now your legs are completely in your hands. That is to say, everything depends on you. If you are strong, you will walk. You understand me?" The boy nodded. "Of course I will be strong." The woman smiled. David watched her soft movements and thought that her smile was like a ray of light in a world of pain and suffering that brings hope and consuelo, instills confidence that everything will be fine, provides hope and optimism. The nurse's smile is a medicine that helps patients overcome trials and move forward, and he will definitely move forward. 3 days later, David left his room for the first time and saw where everything had been. This time, the rehabilitation center for the disabled turned out to be much larger than he could imagine. The boy's heart tightened with compassion and desire to escape. It was strange to be here among people who had also lost their lives. David took a look at the room. It was spacious and bright. High ceilings, large windows with light curtains that let the rays of the midday sun pass through. The walls hung bright paintings and motivational photographs of participants in the Paralympic Games, some without legs, others without arms, others with dark glasses. The images inspired the residents of the center to think that everyone they had the strength to overcome obstacles. David could not move his legs, so he moved in a wheelchair. Here all the conditions were created for that. He slowly rolled along the bright corridor, observing the people and the center itself. Here there were special rooms for rehabilitation, physical and therapy, exercise rooms, gyms with modern equipment, and a pool for hydrotherapy. I saw how in each room there was activity, and I understood that here it was not acceptable to go everywhere. There reigned an atmosphere of hope, faith, and strength. Superhuman spoke to him, both the medical staff and other patients. He was happy to receive care because he was tired of fighting nightmares. Only here in the rehabilitation center there were people of different ages and backgrounds with different stories and sorrows. But David clearly understood that each patient he was full of determination and desire to move forward. Everyone supported each other, and he was very happy with it. 2 months passed. David had left the wheelchair a long time ago. He had learned to get around with crutches and had become one of his own at the center. He had found true friends who believed in his recovery, but he had to say goodbye to them. The discharge documents were due to arrive at any moment. David hoped and feared at the same time. He was afraid, returning to the world where he was once just a common worker named Dev. It was terrifying to realize that beyond the walls of the hospital, life continued its course and no one cared. It scared him very much, but that would be later. For now, he was still here in the safe and supportive environment of the rehab center. Out of habit, David went out for a morning walk through the hallways and suddenly he stopped in front of him. A girl in a wheelchair stopped. In which he had once shot the girl was clearly knew the boy was seeing her for the first time. At that moment, he felt chills run through his skin. Everything around him became blurry and lost shape. This girl was so beautiful that with her beauty, she seemed to eclipse the sun. Her sad gaze like a mirror reflected unfathomable depths of the soul, and her swollen lips moved the boy's heart. The dark brown hair of the wonderful stranger was loose. She played in the rays of the sun that filtered through the curtains, creating around from the girl an aura of mystery and magic. Even in the wheelchair, she did not lose her grace, and with the straight back, the long neck, the incredibly soft hands, and one leg in her previous life, David probably. He would have felt uncomfortable, scared. He would have looked away, but not now. In this life, he was enchanted by her. Defeated, captivated. He stared at the girl, and with every fiber of his being he felt how he was falling in love. He carefully approached her with his crutches as he watched her. David tried to go unnoticed. Because I understood her condition. I knew how scared she must be at this moment, and yet she was beautiful. The hospital clothes could not hide her athletic figure, and her skin cared for in every detail of her appearance. From the stranger you could see the meticulous care of her appearance, as if she were about to step on the red carpet. She was not just a beautiful girl in a wheelchair. She was her own source of inspiration and admiration. "Hello, I'm David," the boy greeted shyly. "I'm Lucy," the girl responded, swallowing her tears, one dull, another, and another. David stayed there in silence, giving him time. The girl looked at him with gratitude for not invading her personal limits. He wanted to take her hand, hug her, bring her closer to him, but she didn't move from her position. Place now she was too vulnerable. "I didn't want to scare her." "What happened to you?" Lucy asked when she calmed down a bit. "An accident at work," the boy exhaled with a silly smile. "At least that's what the police report says, and in reality our boss wanted to impress some investors, and he forgot about security, and I ended up not being in the right place at the right time." The big brown eyes got even bigger. "So you're here because of someone else's mistake?" "Yes, there are many like us here." David smiled awkwardly again. "Lorenzo, for example, fell out of the window when he was trying to reach the neighbor's cat, and Ariel was working at the fair. Her assistant forgot to tell her something, and she got trapped between the train cars. Life knows how to play anyway." David knew that he was talking nonsense, but he couldn't stop an eye. Because of the mistake of another sob, Lucy, drowning again in tears, was crossing the street at the pedestrian crossing, and an idiot was passing by with the red light. "Now I'm here and he live calmly." "Damn rich." David couldn't find what to say. Any words seemed inappropriate, so he simply put his hand on Lucy's shoulder, letting her know that she wasn't alone. "And I was a dancer." "I'm a lone girl." "Well, she was a dancer," and she sobbed again. David's heart tightened. He himself had not fully accepted his illness, and now he had to support her. The beautiful girl who in an instant lost a leg, her dreams, her control over herself. Sometime later, David was discharged from the hospital. Outside the center it was hot and sunny in the heart of the bustle of the city. Between the walls of the multi-story buildings, an oasis of tranquility and serenity stretched out. As we left the vicious street, David entered this cozy labyrinth of flower beds and paths where the noise of the metropolis was fading under the soft cover of greenery and silence. Specifically, he got out of the taxi a block away to walk around. Now this was his new home. After leaving the rehabilitation center, he did not want to return to his old apartment where everything would remind him of his previous life. Now it was different, and he was starting over. David was in no hurry to go anywhere. He walked towards his entrance, observing the patio in the shadowy corners. The light played through the leaves of the trees, creating patterns strangers on the cobblestones of the sidewalks. The greenery framed the paths that extended along the buildings, inviting them to stop and enjoy the moment of calm. From the playground, they arrived happily, full of laughter. The boys and girls climbed the colored plastic structures, shouting and laughing. Once upon a time, he too was carefree like that. A long time ago, he sighed and continued on. On the benches in the center of the patio, old men sat, flipping through the yellowed pages of the newspapers and commenting in a loud voice. Oasis in the ocean of concrete jungles stretched out a green lawn. David smiled, imagining how he would organize a picnic there with his friends. Climbing the stairs, he entered the elevator and pressed the button for his floor before the doors closed. An elderly woman entered the elevator. She gave David an appraising look but said nothing. This was a type of look familiar to him. All those with disabilities received it. All those who did not look like the normal inhabitants of this world. The center's psychologist had prepared David for these looks, filled at the same time with contempt and compassion. And it was a pity after dozens of sessions that he thought he was prepared to face those looks, but it turned out to be more difficult in real life than in the sessions with the psychologist. Much more difficult when crossing the threshold of his new home. The first thing David did was call Lucy. She was still in rehab, and he already missed her terribly. "What do you think?" "Your new home?" asked the girl from the phone screen. "Okay," he smiled, "but with you it will be better." From the first moment he met Lucy, David understood that he did not want to let her go. He promised himself to be her solid support and protection against any danger. Determined to be there, even if she never loved him, her love would be enough for both of them. Every day over and over again, David turned on the video on YouTube. He stood in front of the monitor in the middle of the room and took a deep breath. He knew it was an unbearable pain. He would go through his back again. He knew he would fall again and maybe hit his head again. He knew that, but he still stood up. He looked at the girl on the screen and he saw his reflection. He saw his dreams and hopes. His heart began to beat stronger than usual, filling the air with passion and determination. He was an invalid deprived of the ability to dance, an invalid who would keep trying infinitely, and one day, he would dance. The first step, you feel every muscle in his body. The movements are very difficult, but David does not. He gives up moving his crutches. He tries to transfer the weight to his legs. He moves his arms, imitating the girl in the video, swinging his head and hips. Another step, his legs do not obey him. His back hurts from the effort, but he continues forward. Slowly but surely he masters the basic movements. A smile touches his face, and he understands that he is capable of a lot despite his illness. He is stronger than his destiny, stronger. Making another movement and another. Suddenly he too abruptly transferred the weight of the crutches to legs, and unable to handle it, he fell to the ground. From the small of his back to his neck, he felt pain so intense that David could not contain a moan. He lay there and moaned like a newly wounded. It seemed an eternity passed before he turned around and tried to get up. There were no nurses, doctors, or colleagues in the apartment. He had to manage by himself, taking air into his lungs and exhaling loudly through his mouth. David said to himself, "I'm going to dance, not for me, for Lucy. I want to show her that life ends with one leg. I want to show her that she can still dance. I want to show her that I am willing to do anything for her." In the end, in the world of dance, there are no limits or barriers here. Each person is free regardless of their limitations. Here, everyone can find their place and develop their potential, and as long as the music plays, we have to keep dancing, giving ourselves and everyone around us a little magic and joy. "Good morning, John Walter. You don't know what horrible noise is coming from the third floor," he complained. A woman with big glasses meeting the neighbor from the second floor in the entrance. "Hello, Parrot Dale. I myself have been trying to understand it all week. Sometimes something falls, sometimes there are screams. You can't sleep or see the television in peace. I also worry about my girls. I don't want them to be scared. Yes, we have to take care of the girls. The children's pike is not a toy. I will go talk to that disturber of the peace. The whole home is suffering because of him. Go ahead, Parrot, come on. And yes, need help, let me know. I'm always available." David was standing by the open window and listening to the absurd conversation. It was strange to hear how they talked about you in the third person, and even stranger to realize that your innocent hobby bothered so much. Someone, after a few minutes, knocked on the door, said that he was not dressed and did not open it, but he apologized for the noise and promised to free the others from worry the next day when he returned home. John Walter felt a delicious aroma when he saw that his darling's girls were setting the table. First, he kissed his wife, and then his two daughters. He went to change and wash his hands. During dinner, the family shared not only food, but also a moment of joy and closeness. The wife, with a smile on the face and sparkles in his eyes, he poured aromatic tea into the cups, and his loving hands caressed each item on the table. The relatives exchanged news, jokes, and conversations when suddenly a lament so piercing was heard from above that both the girls, his wife, and himself, owner of the house, were scared to death. Prolonged moans, bangs, broken screams, and a range of infernal sounds mixed into one. "That's enough. I'll call the police," John shouted, and grabbed the phone. Half an hour later, the police arrived. Patrolmen, the whole house, came out to see what was happening in the unfortunate apartment, and he was about to explode with rage. Everything inside him was boiling. He had been building up irritation for too long. The agents knocked on the door. It was opened by a young man leaning on a crutch, orderly, attentive, careful. His appearance did not fit at all with the terrible sounds that had been heard from the apartment a few minutes ago. "Excuse me for this noise," the young man began. But how much longer can it last? The neighbors complained, interrupting themselves. We cannot watch each other or sleep peacefully. It is incomprehensible. Silence. Respectable neighbors. One of the police officers intervened. Explain to us what is happening. He addressed the man with the crutch. You see, he continued. The young man, looking down at the crutch, recently discharged me from the center. Rehabilitation there I met a wonderful girl. Her name is Lucy. Her eyes shone with joy. When I thought of her, I fell in love with her so deeply that I decided to save her at any cost. The man sighed. She was a dancer. Professional, but lost a leg in a car accident. A murmur of indignation and surprise was heard in the lobby. Her dreams of a career in dance crumbled to pieces along with her faith in herself and her love for life. Understand, a very beautiful young woman. She lost not only a leg, she lost herself. All the residents stood still. It seemed like they weren't even breathing. I can't leave her alone with this unbearable burden. I can't let her wither like a flower without water. Understand, the young man looked at the neighbors. I decided to show him that you can dance even without one leg. All the neighbors standing on the stairs gasped at the same time. And I know I didn't even stand out for my choreographic talent without crutches, and with crutches this art is even more difficult. The man smiled and then continued seriously. The pain is hellish. My legs don't obey me. They don't want to work. Sometimes I fall to the ground helplessly and cry like a dog beaten by pain and despair. But then I get up and I continue with my training. The young man looked again at all the neighbors. Some had tears in their eyes. Others looked down guiltily. But everyone was waiting with equal interest for the rest of the story, and John was also waiting anxiously. At first, I couldn't stand on my legs. Well, what to say, with 2 crutches I could barely get to the bathroom. The doctors said that the wheelchair would be my friend forever. They said I would never be able to walk, and here I am. You can imagine I decided to dance. Understand, his sad face was touched again by a sunny smile, and I'm dancing. Look, here I am. The man hit his crutch against the wall. He spread his arms to the sides, balancing on one leg and moving his hips and arms to the rhythm of a non-existent melody. The audience in the lobby burst into applause. Everyone was cheering and praising the man with the crutch, enjoying his achievements. John's heart was filled with a wide range of emotions. Every day I record my classes on video and send them to Lucy. Continued the young man. At first, didn't even look at them. She's at home now, she sighed. She doesn't want to see anyone. She doesn't want to talk to anyone. She's clearly depressed. I went through that too, so more than anyone I understand her. And I won't give up. I'll get her out of this. Man, he took air into his lungs and exhaled it noisily. He looked at the neighbors, and the neighbors looked at him. Each one at that moment was thinking about something of his own, and in the hall silence reigned for a few minutes. People looked at each other. They inhaled and exhaled, nodding. With the head. I feel so ashamed, suddenly said John. The first couldn't even imagine that you danced through the pain for love. John looked down at the ground, then took a step closer to the neighbor with the crutch and held out his hand. Simply understand me. I have 2 little daughters, a wife. I care about them. Anyway, I'm John. If I can help with anything, let me know. David, the man on the 3rd floor, responded to the handshake. Thank you. Neighbors, interrupting each other one after another, began to offer their help. David squeezed the girl's hand, crutch, and smiled gratefully. Tears of joy shone in his sad eyes, and his brave face suddenly became soft and tender. Thanks to you. The police left. The neighbors scattered around their apartments. The heartbreaking story did not leave anyone indifferent. Everyone felt ashamed. People were so obsessed with their irritation with the noise that they did not even try to discover its cause. They were angry with the neighbor because he prevented them from watching television quietly, while he himself desperately struggled to. A normal life. Bad for the love of humanity. The day came to an end, but the thoughts remained in the mind. Dad, and if I teach David, proposed John's eldest daughter, sitting at the dining room table. I have been going to dance classes for 2 years. I'll show you the moves. The parents looked at each other, and at the same time looked up at the ceiling. David lives 1 floor above, and maybe right now he's fighting the pain to take another step, and he felt pleased that his little girl showed compassion. So please, supposed. Decided to support her. Of course, Megan, let's agree with David and schedule specific days for classes. Hooray. Both daughters applauded happily. I'm sure David will be delighted. After all, communication and support are the best thing one person can give to another. Megan adored his dance studio. Every time he entered there, he imagined that he was crossing the threshold of a magical world where each movement became part of an incredible symphony of emotions. The spacious room surrounded by mirrored walls reflected each step. As if creating a parallel reality where time flowed, according to other rules, the air here was permeated with rhythms of music that sounded in some distant place, like if they were inviting into their world. The whisper of dancing feet created a melodic background, filling the space with a fairy tale. The mirrors on the walls reflected not only movements but also feelings and concentrated glances, sometimes funny. The faces of Megan's friends flickered in the reflections like real stars in the sky. At night in the studio, there was also a corner to rest where the girls kept bottles of water and chatted before classes. On the wall, where there was no mirror, they hung photos of their previous performances, remembering that here everyone finds their way to success and perfection. The dance studio that Megan went to was not just a place to train. It was a world where dreams were born and ideas came true, where everyone could find their place and their destiny. Megan was very happy of having come here. "Hello, girls. Now I'm going to tell you something incredible," Megan exclaimed, throwing her bag on the sofa. The friends gathered and began to sit around her. "Now, I'm going to be a dance teacher," Megan announced proudly. "How is that?" They were surprised. "The girls lives above us. A man named David wants to learn to dance because he loves Lucy, and she was a dancer, but she had an accident, and now she doesn't have a leg." Megan looked at her friends and raised her head higher. "David wants to show Lucy that you can dance even without one leg because he loves her a lot, but he himself doesn't know how to dance, so I'll teach him." "That's right." While the girls were surprised, "Yes, it does seem like I know who that girl is," Lucy suddenly said, the refined choreographer Isabel. Megan didn't realize that she had entered in the dance class. "Apparently I had heard the whole story," is my colleague sighed sadly. "Isabel worked in our studio. She only ran classes on other days, so they don't know her." Her eyes were crying after the accident. "I haven't seen her again. They say she refuses to go out from home, and if we invite David and Lucy to our group," one of Megan's friends proposed, "they could join us and they would feel exactly good, and altogether we will teach David to dance," added Megan. Isabel put a finger to her chin. "Alex, that's an idea. Wonderful. No, we can't invite you to our group, of course, but we can open a separate group for the whole." Last month, Isabel was just researching about opening a specialized group for students with special needs looking for similar internships. He consulted with psychologists and doctors, read thematic literature, convinced the study's leader, then found sponsors to make the group completely free, and equipped himself with a ton of knowledge and new skills, all to help his former colleague and everyone else facing a similar situation. Meanwhile, Megan had been practicing with David at home under the careful guidance of her choreographer, and Isabel was spreading information about the group's opening on thematic forums and internet portals. The day finally arrived. A new group appeared in the studio schedule. The first class began. "Welcome." Isabella nodded to the boy who was awkwardly moving his legs. "Hello." He smiled. The young man crossing the threshold of the ballroom, leaning on a crutch. What to think? A handsome young man dragged by the whirlwind of life carries on its shoulders the weight that time does not tame. He is disabled, but his spirit is not weakened. On the contrary, he is full of strength and determination to overcome all the barriers that the destiny throws at him. His eyes are windows to the soul that shine brighter than any starry sky. In them resides an unbridled desire for life, the willingness to accept all adversities with an open heart and soul. Those eyes reflect not only pain and disappointment, but also an iron will and unwavering determination. The disabled young man moves through life with lightness and grace. Despite his physical limitations, his steps are small victories, evidence of a tireless fight for a place under the sun. He not only walks, he conquers worlds that others only dream about. His smile is a ray of light in a dark world, illuminating the gray days with warmth, and is like a magnet that attracts people to him and charges them with energy and optimism. In its simplicity and sincerity lies a force capable of overcoming any obstacle. The disabled young man is not just a person with limited abilities. He is a warrior fighting for his place in the world and demonstrating that the power of the spirit can overcome any obstacle. His story is a story of bravery, determination, and inflexibility that inspired and admired everyone who met him on his path, and Isabel sincerely admired him. "I have heard a lot about you," the choreographer smiled, pointing to her little pupil Megan. "I am delighted to meet you finally, and I'm very happy," answered David. A little embarrassed that day, he was the only student, but in the corner of the room there was a telephone that transmitted the live broadcast. At first, no one watched the broadcast, but towards the end of the training there were already several thousand spectators. Among them was Lucy, the love of the beginner dancer, a choreographer great who had lost a leg due to someone's mistake. She wrote a comment under the video, "I am watching, and crying very recently. I was teaching children to dance in the same room. I showed them movements. I taught them the technique. I made them stretch their toes. I praised and scolded the girls, and I loved my work infinitely, and now I am lying in bed half alive and regretting, but I'm tired of being weak. I want to live again and enjoy life, even without a leg. Thank you, David, for guiding me. Thank you for your bravery, your resistance, and your strength. I admire you infinitely, and I am infinitely grateful to you. I have decided I will return to life thanks to you. In the next class, David and Lucy came together. They moved synchronously with their hands and heads, swaying to the slow rhythm of a foreign song and shining with happiness. David showed his beloved not only the dances, but he opened the door to a future shines that Lucy refused to see. Isabel's new students took a step towards that door together, holding hands. David started his YouTube channel, and the whole city found out about his dance group. It's been months since their first class, and now there are 8 passionate dancers. All of them were special, but all equally strong, passionate, unbreakable in spirit. They came to the studio. They danced and forgot their ailments. They enjoyed life and believed that the best was yet to come. The young people. They inspired others by showing by their example that life is beautiful in all its manifestations and that problems do not really exist. Lucy now lived with David. It was easier for them to take care of each other. Sometimes they dropped something. They laughed or screamed. But the neighbors no longer complained. On the contrary, now they came often to visit. I entertained them with homemade cakes and did everything possible to help, as if there had never been anger or misunderstandings. Now everyone lived as one big united family. Lucy looked around the window and reflected that she would probably never be able to fully accept her new reality, but she still tried very hard. David insisted that she had to forgive the person who took her leg, and somewhere deep in her heart the girl agreed, but she still couldn't do it. Although she tried a lot, at least she tried to live a full life with the person who wouldn't let her down. Lucy considered David an incredible person. If it weren't for him, she wouldn't have recovered. She would have sunk into her pain, would have locked herself away and isolated herself from the world. But he saved her. He saved her soul by giving her hope. Now Lai walked with her head held high behind him. She helped David give hope to lost souls like they once were themselves. How wonderful it was to have each other to the other. And it seems that soon there would be 3. Life is a precious gift that we receive only once. It is full of endless wonders and opportunities that we have been given to explore, experiment, and love. In every moment there is a value that we often overlook in the search of illusory goals. Valuing life means finding beauty in its invisible moments, in the smile of a stranger on the street, in the aroma of freshly baked bread, in the warmth of the sun's rays on the skin, in the kindness of a neighbor. At the dance means realizing that even in the most difficult times, there is something valuable that enriches us and makes us more meaningful. Valuing life means being grateful for each day, for each breath, for each heartbeat, for each step. Means remembering those who could not live a full life and being grateful for the opportunity to live ours. Means realizing that each day is a gift that we must accept and carry in our hearts. Valuing life means living fully, enjoying every moment of every breath. Means seeking adventures, aspiring to dreams. Loving and being loved means opening yourself to the world and throwing yourself into its arms. Valuing life means taking care of yourself and those around you. Means being careful, compassionate, and kind, because our lives are intertwined with the lives of other people, and each of us impacts the world around us. Therefore, we are going to value life, not just live it. We are going to live fully with love and gratitude. Let every day be a new adventure, new step towards happiness and the realization of our dreams, and something more. In a world where every step counts as a victory, helping people with special needs is not just a kind act, it is a manifestation of true human consciousness and compassion. When we meet the gaze of someone with a disability, we must see in that person not only someone with physical limitations, but also as someone endowed with great strength and spiritual wisdom. By helping people with special needs, we are building bridges between worlds, bringing destinations closer together. Different stories, we open the doors to a world of possibilities where there is no place for prejudices or limitations. We give them hope for a future full of light and joy, and we also offer that hope to each other, ourselves, because by helping others we strengthen our own soul and heart. We understand that we all have the power to make the world a better place, and that even the smallest act of kindness can change a person's life for the better. We learn to see beauty in differences, and to appreciate each person as they are by supporting those who are different from us. We are building a society based on mutual understanding and mutual help. We create a culture of inclusion where every person has the right to equal opportunities and dignity. We make the world a more harmonious and fair place by eradicating discrimination and alienation. We do not want to live in an ideal world. We do not want our children, grandchildren, and children to live in this world and what this ideal world is like. We can call ideal a world where harmony, equality, and understanding reign. It is a place where each person finds their place under the sun, where each day is full of meaning and joy. In an ideal world, there is no division into classes or groups. Social here, each person is valued and respected regardless of their position, wealth, or appearance. In an ideal world, there is no place for discrimination, injustice, and lack of equity. Here, the rights and freedoms of each person are protected and respected not only by law, but also by public opinion. In an ideal world, mutual aid and solidarity reign. People help each other without expecting gratitude or reward. They understand that only by uniting can they overcome difficulties and problems that arise along the way. Here, every person has access to education, healthcare, decent work, and respect from others. Here, there is no poverty or despair. Here, every person has the opportunity to develop and reach their potential regardless of whether they have legs or arms. Nature is valued and respected in the ideal world as the common home of all humanity. People lovingly care for the environment, striving to preserve its beauty and richness for the future generations. But the most important thing in the ideal world is the love and understanding that unites all its inhabitants into a single whole. People love, respect, and support each other, seeking to create a world where everyone can be happy, free, and fulfilled. We are going to create our ideal world together.